Good evening and welcome to Gravitas. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. Let's get started.
We are suffering.
It is already acquiring some racial undertones.
South Africa is witnessing its worst riots in years. Looting and arson is rampant. The army has been deployed on the streets, but it's not helping. Now, Indian businesses are coming under attack. They say the protest has taken a racist turn. It started with the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma. He's been embroiled in corruption cases along with the Gupta family from India. The nexus was so strong that they were popularly called the Zuptas in South Africa. That's Zuma plus Gupta. Now the man is in jail and his supporters are running riot. The images are shocking. Some of the biggest cities in the country are seeing a complete breakdown of law and order. On Gravitas tonight, we'll bring you the latest ground reports, also the story of Zuma and Guptas and why the anger against them is perhaps being channelized against the Indian community now. Also on the show, China have met. In New Delhi, Afghanistan seeks military aid from India. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson calls out the Labour Party's racism, shows a Labour poster of Johnson and Indian Prime Minister Modi in Parliament. And toy guns are a bad idea, we say. Real guns looking like toys are even worse. We'll tell you how a Lego-like gun has triggered a controversy. We begin as always with Gravitas Global Headlines.
Following the Shanghai Cooperation Organization contact group meet on Afghanistan, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said the world stands against seizure of power by violence and force and will not legitimize such actions. Authorities in Thailand are scrambling to provide beds to COVID-19 patients as the country grapples with a surge in cases. Virus hotspot Bangkok and 9 other hard-hit provinces are now under stricter restrictions. Meanwhile, in Myanmar, people waited for hours in queues to get oxygen cylinders as supplies dried up across Yangon. Bangladesh will lift its nationwide lockdown from Wednesday midnight to mark the festival of Eid al-Adha. All restrictions would be eased, even as the number of COVID-19 cases reaches record level. The EU has unveiled a sweeping plan to tackle climate change, pledging to cut emissions by 55% to 1990 levels by 2030. Brussels also wants to end the sale of new petrol cars by 2035. Weeks after announcing a unilateral ceasefire, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has vowed to defend and repel attacks by Ethiopia's enemies after rebels in Tigray launched a fresh offensive to regain territory. France celebrated its 2021 Bastille Day under the shadow of COVID-19. President Macron presided over the ceremony, which marks the start of the French Revolution of 1789. Storms caused widespread flooding across central Germany, with authorities warning that more rains is on the way. Firefighters in the western city of Hagen said that they had to rescue several drivers after their vehicles got stuck in a flooded underpass. Firefighters struggled to bring the blaze near California's Yosemite National Park under control. The fire has triggered evacuations, destroyed at least 5 structures, and threatens a highway leading to the entrance of Yosemite. Less than 10 days before the start of the Olympic Games, Tokyo has reported 1,149 new infections, the highest figure in 6 months. The discovery of a COVID cluster at a hotel hosting dozens of Brazilian team members has added to fears. International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach met with Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga today and reiterated that everything possible was being done to keep the Japanese public safe and secure during the Games. Golf's oldest major returns after a 2-year hiatus on Thursday. The 149th edition of the British Open is being held at the Royal St George's Course in England, with players under strict COVID-19 curbs. Irishman Shane Lowry is the defending champion, but 6 players have won majors since, and there is a stacked field of contender, including Spanish world number 1 Jon Rahm, who won the US Open last month.
Tonight we begin with South Africa. The country is unraveling. Complete collapse of law and order. I want to start with one video that sums up how bad the situation is. A woman throwing her baby out of a burning building. Look at this. A building set on fire, people jumping out of it. A woman was trapped here with her baby. She had nowhere to go, so she decided to save her child's life by throwing it down, hopefully to be caught by the crowds. The baby was dropped, not once but twice. First, the mother threw it towards a woman on the roof of the ground floor. She caught the baby. She then threw it towards some people on the road. It's a desperate and extremely dangerous situation. Reports say the mother too survived the fire and has been reunited with the baby. This happened in Durban. This is one of the most shocking incidents, but others are hardly better. Scenes of rioting, loot and violence are everywhere. It's been going on for 5 days now. Last week, former President Jacob Zuma went to jail. He was found guilty of contempt of court. He also faces major corruption charges. As soon as he was taken into custody, his followers began protesting. Now they've gone out of control. Looters are running wild on the streets. Shopping centers are being destroyed. The police are overwhelmed. Even the army cannot seem to contain the situation. More than 74 people have died in the past few days. 74. More than 1,200 people have been arrested. Look at this now. This happened 2 days ago. Looters stormed a shopping center, completely destroyed the shops. This video was shot by a local in the KwaZulu-Natal province. It's on the outskirts of Durban. It's a Zuma stronghold. Now look at what happened today. An entire mall set on fire. This was in Pietermaritzburg. Major retailers were robbed here. The police and security forces were nowhere to be seen. Looters just grabbed what they could and left. And this is just one of the many buildings that have been set on fire in recent days. This is what Durban looks like today. The sky was filled with smoke. A warehouse set on fire. Same story across South Africa, you could say. Warehouses and shopping malls set ablaze. Our correspondent, Calden Onmugu, went to one such mall that was set on fire in Johannesburg. She witnessed firsthand the response of the local officials and the police and captured on camera the arrest of one rioter. Take a look.
I am at Chris Hani Crossing Mall. This is the recent mall that has been attacked yesterday by the looters. Part of this mall was also set alight. Here are the firefighters. They were quick to react and they say they were able to douse the fire. They've been busy since yesterday. I spoke to some of them and they said they've been busy since last night. Huge police presence, both from the South African Police Services as well as Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department officials are here. This is one of the truck that the police has brought to confiscate some of the things that the looters were taking. But you know, it's very surprising. Upon our arrival here, There's a heavy police presence, but the way community members are not fazed at all. Some of them were still trying to get through the fence and help themselves to some of the shops. You can see live on visual here. Police are making an arrest. One of this person was trying to get in and take the little of what has been left in the stores. You can see here.
The government has deployed the army to guard the streets, but that's not helping. Hundreds of businesses are being destroyed and Indians are facing the worst of this. They're coming under attack. The Indian community is appealing for help in South Africa. They say the rioters are targeting them. This video is doing the rounds on social media. We've not been able to verify it, but this is what it shows. People who are being called members of the Indian community carrying guns, fighting an angry mob of rioters. The mob can be seen at a distance, throwing stones. Local media reports say tensions are escalating in Indian and white suburbs. Citizens have picked up guns to protect their property. When a local lawmaker was asked about this, he said the residents have, quote-unquote, a right to do so, pick up arms. A lot of people in the Indian community are reaching out to WION. We've been tracking the developments on ground zero with our reporters in Johannesburg and Durban. Earlier today, we received these pictures from the Indian diaspora. They said their businesses were being looted and shops being gutted. 2 Indian businessmen gave us a first-hand account of what's going on.
I was doing a business. My 3 shops, 1 warehouse have looted. My all friends are doing business here are looted. We are suffering. I am very sick. I can't even speak now. We are staying without food, without home. We are very bad. Please help us, however.
Last 2 days have been the most turbulent days of my experience in Durban, and the kind of rampant looting, vandalism, and absolute lawlessness and anarchy which is going around. I hope government is able to control it at the really earliest, maybe next few days they should control it. Otherwise, it is already acquiring some racial undertones, and this can bring another dimension to this problem.
The Indian community is appealing for help. They're demanding protection from the South African government. New Delhi is watching the situation closely. Today, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar spoke to his counterpart in South Africa. What happens there is of immense significance and interest to India. South Africa, is home to the largest Indian diaspora in the African continent. More than 1 million people of Indian descent live in this country. It's a strong and vibrant community that has an integral role in South African economy. But why are Indians coming under attack in South Africa? The answer to that question is in our next story. As I told you, this started off as a protest for one man, former President Jacob Zuma. Today it has engulfed the entire country. Business owners complaining of financial ruin, families hiding in their homes scared of being targeted. And as always, some communities are facing the brunt of it. Like the Indian diaspora, they fear the riots are slowly revealing a racial divide in South Africa. So here's a question. Is the country that defeated apartheid forgetting its roots? Why are Indians being targeted for South Africa's failures? Our next report explores.
These are post-apocalyptic scenes in South Africa. Roads overrun with military vehicles. Malls and stores pillaged. And the dreaded sound of rubber bullets ringing through the air. How did this young democracy descend into chaos? Thanks to the malicious defiance of this man, South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma. He's often called the Teflon leader, blessed with the uncanny skill of escaping blame. Zuma is neck-deep in corruption, but in South Africa, he's still a hero, a champion of the poor, and when champions get jailed, expect a pushback.
The truth is, if they were to release Zuma, I think we would be free. As things stand, we are going to keep protesting.
Zuma is being investigated for corruption, but he's never appeared in court. No testimonies, no cooperation. So the top court charged him with contempt. He was sentenced to 15 months in prison. Zuma's response? More defiance. He refused to turn himself in for 8 days. All this time, his supporters were mobilizing. Then, on the 8th of July, Zuma surrendered. Soon, protests turned to riots. Slogans gave way to plunder. It wasn't just about Zuma's arrest anymore. It was about South Africa's waning economy. Nearly half the adult population still lives in poverty. Unemployment hit a record high of 32.6%. So discontent was always there. Zuma, the wily politician, played on it, but the government doesn't agree.
What we are witnessing now are opportunistic acts of criminality with groups of people instigating chaos merely as a cover for looting and theft. There is no grievance nor any political cause that can justify the violence and the destruction that we have seen in parts of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng.
The president has a point. Stealing beer and TV sets does not solve poverty. Neither does burning shopping malls and warehouses. Caught in the middle of this mindless violence are the people. And as always, some communities are more affected than others. The Indian diaspora in Durban is one such community. Their shops have been singled out and looted. Could the unrest be gaining a racist overtone? Some residents certainly think so.
2 days have been the most turbulent days of my experience in Durban. And the kind of rampant looting, vandalism, and absolute lawlessness and anarchy which is going around, it is an outstanding event, I can say. Already acquiring some racial undertones, and this can bring another dimension to this problem.
At the center of Zuma's corruption case is this family, the Zuptas, vastly rich and equally nefarious. They migrated from India in 1993. Their rise involved bribing officials and stealing government contracts. Many South Africans feel the Zuptas overran their country. Is this perception channeling the anger towards Indians? Unfortunate for a society that is all too familiar with racism. 6 days on, the streets are still burning. South African democracy is at a crossroads. Years back, one man waged this country's most dogged revolution. He fought that battle in peace, locked inside the four walls of a tiny cell on Robben Island. Today, the discontent is fiery. It's violent, lawless, and disruptive. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Islamabad. And there's more in store for Pakistan as the Afghan situation worsens. On the 2nd of July, US troops fled from Afghanistan. They vacated the Bagram air base in the middle of the night, left Afghanistan to fend for itself against the Taliban, left Afghanistan's neighbors to undo the damage done by a 20-year-long war, America's failed war. 12 days later, this is what Afghanistan looks like. The Taliban controls most of the country. They claim that they control 85% of it. They control or contest all the border crossing points along Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, China, and now even Pakistan. Taliban's latest gain is the border crossing of Spin Boldak. This is along the Afghan frontier with Pakistan. The Afghan government denies losing control. Sources in Pakistan say that the Taliban flag is flying. There's no way we can verify this. But like we've been telling you all week, the Taliban's goal is one of strategic control. This involves encircling major cities, taking control of the borders, seizing dry ports, stopping the revenue from reaching the government, the Afghan government, and filling its own coffers. Spin Boldak is the Taliban's biggest strategic gain. So, number one, at least 900 trucks cross this frontier every two. Spin Boldak provides the Taliban a direct access to the Pakistani province of Balochistan. Why is this province important? Because this is where the Taliban has its reserve fighters, also its top leadership. Reason number three, there is a highway that connects Spin Boldak to the Karachi port. Why is that important? Because it helps the Taliban with its heroin trade. Pakistan says it is well prepared to deal with the spillover effect of the Taliban's rampage, but the world knows better than taking it at face value. Inside Afghanistan, violence is on the rise. Tonight we have another video for you. This one was shot from inside a moving Humvee. Inside the car are Afghan special forces. They're driving through the province of Kandahar, a province that the Taliban has taken control of. What you'll see next are the forces coming under attack of heavy machine gun fire. Here's a sample of the kind of violence being unleashed by the Taliban. These images can be disturbing. We advise viewer discretion.
Slow.
This is Afghanistan, a country of 32.9 million people, all of whom live with a legacy of war. These are people whose future is now under the control of the Taliban. This is a country where troops are being executed and attacked in broad daylight, where districts are falling like a pack of cards. The country's minorities are either being forced to convert to Islam or leave. And this is already happening in the northern province of Badakhshan. The minority Kyrgyz have fled to Tajikistan, so have many Afghan troops, at least 1,000 of them. More Afghans are likely to seek refuge in Pakistan, Iran and Tajikistan. At least 700,000 Afghans are expected to cross over to Pakistan. More than 1.4 million Afghans already live in Pakistan. Islamabad says it is in no position to accept more refugees. Experts say Afghan refugees will also try to take shelter in Europe. Though it may be a long journey, many are likely to enter Italy via Libya. There are at least 2.6 million registered Afghan refugees living in different parts of the world. They make up the second largest group of asylum seekers in Europe. The continent's policymakers are now facing a fresh refugee challenge, as are Afghanistan's neighbors. And this is all thanks to America's policy failure. The pullout of US troops was a mistake, says former US President George W. Bush. It was under Bush, remember, that America invaded Afghanistan. Now he says, and I quote, Afghan women and girls are going to suffer unspeakable harm. This is a mistake. They're just going to be left behind to be slaughtered by these very brutal people, and it breaks my heart. Well, 10 days and 20 years too late. Afghanistan does not need the outpour of sympathy from its invaders. It needs solutions, ways through which peace can be restored in this country torn by war. Kabul has sought help from India. Earlier today, WION spoke to Farid Mamunze. He is the Afghan envoy to India, and he told us that Afghanistan is looking for India's support in peace talks. But should they fall apart, Kabul will be seeking military aid from New Delhi. Listen to this.
Where India can help the Afghan Republic, the Afghan peace negotiating team, to reach a peace settlement should the peace process produce no results in the weeks and months ahead, then India would naturally be a place where we would seek more military and security assistance from.
New Delhi is doing its bit to ensure there is peace in the neighborhood. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar recently met his Afghan counterpart, Hanif Atmar. Dr. Jaishankar assured Atmar, of India's cooperation in achieving a political settlement in Afghanistan. Earlier this evening, the Indian minister also met his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi on the sidelines of the SCO summit in Dushanbe, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. Afghanistan was on the agenda. Reports say the Taliban and the government of Afghanistan may soon meet in Qatar. This could be as early as the 16th of July, that's day after tomorrow. There's also buzz about a possible meeting before Doha, one that Pakistan wants to organize. How do we know this? Through a tweet from Mohammad Ubair Daudzai. He's Afghanistan's special envoy to Pakistan. On the 13th of July, he tweeted about a possible trip ahead of the Doha talks. Well, we do hope Pakistan is successful in its endeavor, as it calls it, to bring peace in Afghanistan, but there's no way we can ignore Pakistan's deep involvement in the affairs of the Taliban, its funding of the Taliban. Afghanistan is no doubt a crisis of Washington's making, but Islamabad too is equally guilty in the way things have turned out. Martial arts legend Jackie Chan is eyeing a new project. He's auditioning pretty hard for it. He's dancing in Chinese propaganda videos, singing praises of Xi Jinping, all for that elusive membership in the Chinese Communist Party. Jackie Chan has always been a communist sympathizer, but now he wants to make it official. But there's one problem. The Chinese people won't accept him. Our next report tells you why.
1988. Still early days in Jackie Chan's seemingly endless career. He comes out with an action comedy flick, a real stinker called Dragons Forever. The critics hated it. But 30 years on, the movie makes perfect sense. For Jackie Chan, the dragon is indeed forever. He wants to join the Chinese Communist Party, bring some Shaolin into dreary old communism. Might be a shock to Hollywood. But Chan has always been a loyal party man. He is a member of the CPPCC. It's an advisory conference where the party puppeteers Chinese celebrities. Here you see him arms aloft, mouthing a Chinese propaganda song during the party's centenary event. China said dance. Jackie Chan said, say no more. Until now, Chan has stopped short of seeking party membership. After all, he needed work in Hollywood. But now that pretense has dropped. Last week, Chan attended a symposium of Chinese film insiders. They took turns praising Xi Jinping's keynote speech. Not to be left behind, Chan unleashed the hidden dragon. I can see the greatness of the CPC, he said. It will deliver what it says and what it promises in less than 100 years. I want to become a CPC member, he added. The propaganda press loved it. Global Times latched onto the fact that Chan is based out of Hong Kong. For them, this is a sign of changing loyalties. Hong Kong's elite are embracing the party and Jackie Chan is leading the way. But are they overestimating Chan's fame and power? It definitely seems like it. The Shaolin stock is stumbling. Jackie Chan's bumbling action hero doesn't have many takers. And in China, people don't think he's worthy of the party. Talk about a first-day flop. Chinese Weibo users unloaded on Chan. They questioned his character, raised his history of infidelity, and even his son's drug offences. Another day in Hollywood, but in China, this could be a problem. Joining the Communist Party is like joining a Victorian-era secret society. The vetting is excruciating. They dig into personal details and even family history. So Chan's communist dream is a steep one. You may ask, what else can Jackie Chan do? He supported an autocracy, defended a crackdown on democratic protests, even danced to some woeful propaganda music. But that's the reality of supporting China. It doesn't matter if you need the party. What matters is whether the party needs you. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
There was a bitter and furious showdown in the British Parliament today. Prime Minister Boris Johnson on one side and Labour leader Keir Starmer on the other. It was a classic British face-off, a whole lot of whataboutery, stiff jokes that no one laughed at, and very few questions answered. What were the two men arguing about? Who is more racist? That was the question, the Tories or Labour. It's a debate that would only happen in the United Kingdom, two major parties fighting over who is more racist. And we have to say, it's a tough call. Keir Starmer fired the opening shot. He talked about the racist abuse directed at English footballers. But Boris Johnson came prepared. He whipped out a poster that was released by Labour during a recent by-election. This was the poster we are talking about. Some of you may remember it. It shows Boris Johnson and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi together. Why was the Indian Prime Minister on the poster? Because that's how Labour does politics. By spreading fear among minority communities. They branded Prime Minister Modi as an anti-Muslim leader. Even Labour's own legislators disowned this campaign. And today Boris Johnson asked Keir Starmer to set the record straight. He asked him to retract this campaign poster.
And since, Mr. Speaker, he's chucking this kind of thing around, could I ask him now to retract this leaflet produced by the Labour Party during the Batley and Spen by-election, which was condemned by his own MPs as dog whistle racism, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, Starmer.
If you're wondering whether Starmer answered the question, let me help you. He did not. He went on and on about racism in the Conservative Party, but there was no condemnation or retraction of this poster. Talk about double standards. Racism is not a matter of perspective. It is a reality. But Labour doesn't agree. For them, scaring Muslim voters in Britain is not racism. Using them as a vote bank is not racism either. Neither is mudslinging foreign leaders for domestic political gains. But racism is alive and thriving in the Labour Party. We are not the ones saying it. Their own Member of Parliament is. This is what Labour MP Navendu Mishra wrote last month. A hierarchy of racism exists inside the party, and some groups are seen as fair game for attacks based on religion, race and heritage. He then goes on, and I'm quoting again, Labour will not win by playing divide and rule politics against our communities. There you have it. Divide and rule is an old British habit. They did it to colonial subjects around the world, and now they're doing it to their own people, it seems. Boris Johnson called the Labour poster a dog whistle, but was it? Dog whistles are subtle. But there is nothing subtle about this poster. It was pretty explicit. Less of a dog whistle, more of a racist trumpet horn. But don't think that Labour is alone in doing this. The ruling party, the Conservatives, are not any better. A new report, in fact, accuses the UK of breaching multiple articles of the UN Convention on Racism. It found evidence of systemic abuse in all sectors: health, criminal justice, education, employment, immigration. Frankly, this is not surprising. We are talking about a society that abused a 19-year-old boy for missing a penalty. What do you expect? This report squarely blames the UK government for making things worse. During the first matches of the Euros, English fans booed off their own team. Why? Because they took a knee against racism. Now, taking a knee is a personal choice. It does not define your ideology or your attitude, but British leaders were extremely dismissive of it. Johnson refused to condemn the booing fans, and Home Secretary Priti Patel called it gesture politics. So English players are now accusing their own government of stoking the fire. And we come back to the question, who is more racist, Labour or Tories? Well, we can debate this all day, but frankly, we're asking the wrong question, because racism in Britain transcends the political divide. The campaign poster is one manifestation of this racism. What we saw at Wembley on Sunday was another. Now, the Turkish president spoke about Israel last month. These are the words he used: murderers, bloodsuckers, people with killing in their nature. This is how he described Israel and Israelis during the 11-day war with Hamas. Recep Tayyip Erdogan has now changed his tune. On Tuesday, he dialed Israel's new president and stressed on the importance of dialogue, stable ties, the potential for cooperation. What explains this shift? Here's a report.
In May 2021, when tensions between Israel and Palestine were at their peak, the Turkish president had this to say about Israel's actions in a televised speech. They are murderers to the point that they kill children who are 5 or 6 years old. They're only satisfied by sucking blood. This is in their nature. Not only were the remarks anti-Semitic, they revealed the deep animosity that Erdogan harbored for the state of Israel. It's been less than 2 months, and the same leader wants to end the frosty ties between the two nations. On Tuesday, Recep Tayyip Erdogan dialed his new Israeli counterpart, Isaac Herzog. The phone call lasted for a good 40 minutes. What did Erdogan have to say? A lot. According to the Turkish presidency, Erdogan stressed on the importance of stable ties for security and stability in West Asia. He underlined Turkey's emphasis on continuing dialogue despite differences of opinion. And he highlighted how there was a strong potential for cooperation between the two countries in the fields of energy, tourism, and technology. This phone call suggests a potential reset in Israel-Turkey ties. Reports say Erdogan's next conversation will be with Israel's For a president who called Israelis in their nature, this is a major U-turn. What explains this change of heart? Perhaps the change of guard at the ruling coalition. It spans from the far right to the far left. It also features Israel's Arab minority. This is not so much for Arab representation as for cobbling up the numbers for the government. Nonetheless, Arabs are in the Israeli government. And that could be an excuse for Erdogan, if he needs one, to justify his outreach to Israel. Plus, the rest of the region is engaging with Israel. It only makes sense to go with the flow. On the 13th of July, reports said Israel and Morocco were discussing an official visit of Yair Lapid, the current foreign minister and future prime minister of Israel. And on the 14th of July, the UAE opened an embassy in Tel Aviv. The Israeli president said those interested in peace will be welcomed with open arms.
This historic agreement must be extended to other nations and countries seeking peace with Israel. We are a nation of peace, and those who are interested in peace with us will be welcomed with open arms.
Netanyahu steered Israel's peace deals with the Arab world. His exit has not hurt the momentum. Neither has the 11-day war with Hamas. Erdogan, the politician, can see the sands shifting. For once, it's hard to question his logic. Talking to Israel makes sense. The sooner, the better. Bureau Report, WION. World is One.
The United States has a history of toying with rights. You see what's happening in Afghanistan? There's a threat to people's right to life, right to health, courtesy America's botched up war. The picture is not very different back home in the United States, where people are dying every day just because America puts gun rights over human rights. We've been bringing you these stories of gun terror in the US. We've told you how in America there are more guns than people, 393 million firearms for 327 million people. Every year, hundreds of lives are lost to gun violence in the US. More than 500 people have died because of gun terror in the US this year. 180 people were killed during the 4th of July weekend alone. 10 days before that, an Instagram post went viral. It had a picture of a gun, one that looks like a toy, a Lego. But this is a real gun. It costs $549. That's 40,000 Indian rupees. This gun is called Block 19. It is being promoted as a childhood dream come true. The gun company, Kalpa Precision, has said, and I quote, here's one of those childhood dreams coming to life. The Block 19 prototype. Yes, you can actually build Legos onto it. What kind of a sick joke is this? I'm sorry, but guns are not fun. They're deadly. There is no space for Legos on weapons. The gun company was slammed for toying with a gun. Did it apologize? It did not. It said, and I'm quoting, we are grateful for the attention that Block 19 is getting across the globe. But we built Block 19 to create an opportunity to talk about the enjoyment of the shooting sport. Great explanation, just that it does not work. And I will tell you why. There are American states like New York where toy guns are required to be brightly colored. With a Lego gun like this one, a person can easily fool security. Next thing you know, we're reporting on another incident of gun terror in the US. There's absolutely no need to toy around with a weapon like this. Come to think of it, we may also want to rethink making toy guns, toy weapons altogether. You know the guns that kids play with? Do we really need them? Do children really need them? You see, childhood is a very tricky phase. Extremely impressionable years. Everything a child is exposed to can have lifelong implications. I'll give you an example. We often see how children who are exposed to music early in the years develop an interest in learning an instrument while growing up. Similarly, kids who develop the habit of reading early in their childhood become ardent readers when they grow up. And I'm not suggesting that every child who plays with a gun takes up arms. Of course they don't. But embedding the whole idea of violence, of wielding a gun, killing someone with a gun, running around the house shooting people with a hairbrush, it's not exactly desirable. You must have come across children pointing their fingers like handguns towards other kids. The targets often need to play the dead soldiers, the bad guys. You've also heard of instances where a child brings his parents' gun to school and accidentally shoots his classmates or her classmates. You see, kids do not know the difference between a toy gun and a real gun. Well, maybe they do, but the concept of a gun. But we adults do. We're only 7 months into 2021. There have already been 165 accidental shootings by children in the US. In 2020, 142 people died, 142, because of a child or a minor pulling the trigger accidentally. I know most of us have played with gun toys. Most of us have really been spoiled for choice in that sector. We've had water guns, foam guns, those Nerf guns, and more sophisticated paintball guns. Also the ones we would shoot birds with in video games. And of course, Diwali guns in India. But all of this was before gun terror became an everyday affair. This was before getting an access to a real gun became so easy. We grew up in the non-digital times when telling the right from the wrong was easier. Today we live in times where you can play Lego with a real gun. A gun that advertises itself as a childhood dream coming to life. And that too in a year when unintentional shooting by children saw an increase of 30%. So here's what I would wrap with. Childhood dreams involving guns are scary enough. When those dreams come to life, they become a nightmare. Think about it. We're wrapping the show, leaving you as always with Gravitas Images. Thanks for watching.